I stood in my study doorway, watching the chaos unfold in my living room through the lens of my phone. The security camera feed showed everything in crystal clarity. My daughter-in-law Melissa directing traffic like a general commanding troops, her mother Susan already rearranging my furniture, her father Greg hauling boxes into my garage, and her sister Amanda sprawling across the guest bed upstairs as if she owned the place. They had no idea I was watching. They certainly had no idea I was already on my way home. 3 days earlier, I'd been packing for what was supposed to be a 3-week European tour with my book club. At 55, I'd earned this trip. 5 years since Richard passed, 5 years of building my life back piece by piece, 5 years of maintaining my independence while watching my son Jason grow into a man I barely recognized anymore. I'd been organizing my filing cabinet when I noticed Jason's tablet on my desk. He'd left it there during his last visit, and the screen had lit up with a notification. I hadn't meant to snoop, truly I hadn't, but the preview of the message was right there, impossible to ignore. Mom leaves Tuesday morning. We move everything in Tuesday afternoon. By the time she gets back, we'll be so settled in she won't be able to kick us out. My hands had gone cold. I'd unlocked the tablet, Jason's password, still the same one he'd used since college, and found an entire group chat. Jason, Melissa, Susan, Greg, and Amanda, all plotting like conspirators in some cheap heist movie. Melissa had written, "My mum and dad need this. Their lease is up and they're broke. Helen's house is huge and she's alone. It's selfish of her to have all that space." Susan had added, "Once we're in, possession is 9/10 of the law. She won't call the cops on family." Amanda, "Which room do I get? I want the one with the bay window." Jason, my son, my only child, had written just 4 words. "Whatever you think best." I'd sat there in my study for nearly an hour, the tablet screen going dark and lighting up again with each new message. They were planning to invade my home, the home Richard and I had built together, the home I'd fought to keep after he died. They were going to walk in like they owned it and make me the intruder in my own life. The old Helen might have called Jason immediately, crying, demanding explanations. The old Helen might have cancelled her trip and confronted them head-on. But I'd learned something in the 5 years since Richard's death. Patience and planning beat emotional reactions every single time. So I'd smiled. I'd continued packing. I'd called Jason that evening and chatted cheerfully about my trip, asking him to check on the house while I was gone, listening to the slight tremor in his voice as he promised he would. And then, I'd gotten to work. The security cameras were first. I already had 2, one at the front door and one at the back. I added 4 more: living room, kitchen, upstairs hallway, and garage. The company promised same-day installation, and delivered. Each camera fed directly to my phone and backed up to the cloud automatically. Next, I called my attorney, Elizabeth, a woman who'd helped me navigate Richard's estate and had become something of a friend. I explained the situation calmly, precisely, without dramatics. "I need documentation," I told her. "I need proof that this house is solely mine, that no one else has any legal claim to residency, and I need it formatted in a way that law enforcement would respect." Elizabeth didn't ask questions. She had the documents ready by Monday morning. Then I contacted a property management company that specialized in home security during owner absences. I hired them to do daily checks and authorized them to remove any unauthorized occupants. I gave them the police non-emergency number and Elizabeth's contact information. Finally, I upgraded my smart locks. The new system allowed me to control access remotely, receive alerts about any entries, and most importantly, lock the house down completely with a few taps on my phone. By Tuesday morning, when Jason and Melissa came to drive me to the airport, I was ready. I hugged my son at the departure terminal, looked into his eyes that wouldn't quite meet mine, and said I loved him. He mumbled something back, and Melissa chirped about how much fun I was going to have. "Don't worry about the house," Melissa said, her smile bright and hollow. "We'll take good care of everything." "I'm sure you will," I replied, my own smile just as bright, just as hollow. I got updates every few hours once I landed in London. Tuesday afternoon, right on schedule, a moving van pulled up to my house. I watched through the cameras as Melissa unlocked the front door with the spare key I'd given Jason years ago. She'd probably had a copy made. They came in like locusts. Susan immediately began criticising my decorating choices, moving my mother's vase from the mantel, rearranging my throw pillows. Greg hauled in a massive recliner that absolutely did not match my living room aesthetic and planted it in front of my television. Amanda dragged suitcases up to the guest room, then started opening other bedroom doors, comparing spaces like she was shopping for real estate. Melissa supervised it all with the air of someone who'd finally gotten what she deserved. At one point, she stood in the middle of my living room and actually said, loud enough for the camera to catch, "This is so much better than that cramped apartment. I don't know why Jason's mum was so selfish about sharing." Jason was there too, carrying boxes, but I noticed he wouldn't look directly at anything. He kept his head down, his shoulders hunched, moving like a man being marched to his own execution. That night, I watched them eat dinner at my table. Susan had cooked something that splattered grease all over my stove. Greg opened one of Richard's vintage bottles of scotch, the one I'd been saving for a special occasion. Amanda sprawled across my couch with her shoes on, scrolling through her phone and dropping crumbs from her chips onto my Persian rug. And Melissa, sitting at the head of the table in my seat, looked like a queen surveying her kingdom. I gave them 2 days. 2 days to settle in, to get comfortable, to start believing they'd actually gotten away with it. I watched every moment. The cameras caught Susan going through my closets, commenting on how I had such nice clothes for someone who never went anywhere. They caught Greg trying to open the door to Richard's study, which I'd locked with a biometric scanner he couldn't bypass. They caught Amanda taking selfies in my bedroom, pouting at the camera like an influencer staging a home tour. On Thursday morning, I called my book club coordinator and explained that I had a family emergency. I caught a flight that afternoon. The property management company had already paid them a visit on Wednesday. I'd watched that confrontation too, the manager explaining politely but firmly that they were not authorised residents and needed to vacate immediately. Susan had blustered about family rights. Greg had threatened to call his lawyer, which would have been more intimidating if the cameras hadn't caught him admitting earlier that they couldn't afford their old rent. Melissa had tried the crying routine, sobbing about misunderstanding and how they were just helping Jason's poor, lonely mother. The manager had given them until Friday morning to leave. He'd also changed the code on the smart locks, effectively trapping them in until they agreed to go peacefully or the police were called. I wanted to be there for that conversation. I landed Thursday evening, picked up my car from the airport parking, and drove home through the familiar streets of my neighbourhood. It was nearly 9 when I pulled into my driveway. Every light in the house was on, and I could hear raised voices even from outside. I sat in my car for a moment, breathing slowly, preparing myself. Then I picked up my phone, unlocked the front door remotely, and walked inside. The scene in my living room was even better than I'd imagined. Susan and Greg were packed and furious, their belongings stacked haphazardly by the door. Amanda was crying, her face blotchy and red. Jason sat on the stairs, his head in his hands. And Melissa stood in the centre of it all, her face twisted with anger, mid-sentence in what sounded like a tirade about property rights and elder abuse. They all froze when they saw me. "Hello, everyone," I said pleasantly, setting down my purse. "What a surprise to find you all here." Melissa recovered first, her anger switching to fake concern so quickly I might have been impressed if I weren't so disgusted. "Helen, oh my God, you're back early. Is everything okay? Did something happen on your trip?" "Everything is fine," I replied, walking further into my living room, noting every change they'd made, every violation of my space. "I just decided to come home. I missed my house." "Well, we were just—" Susan started, but I held up one hand. "I know exactly what you were doing," I said quietly. "I've known since before I left." The silence that fell was absolute. I could see the calculations happening behind Melissa's eyes, The panic starting to bloom in Susan's expression, the way Greg shifted his weight like he was considering running. I pulled out my phone and walked to the television. It took just a moment to connect, and then the screen filled with video footage. I'd compiled a highlight reel, all the best moments from the past 2 days. Melissa unlocking my door and saying, "Finally, we're home." Susan going through my jewellery box, holding up my pearl necklace and asking if she could have it since I never wore it anyway. Greg finishing that bottle of scotch and belching. Richard always did have good taste. Amanda in my bedroom trying on my clothes and sneering at my style. And Jason standing in the hallway while all of this happened, doing absolutely nothing to stop it. "This is my house," I said, my voice steady and calm as the video played. "This is my home that I bought with my late husband, that I have maintained and paid for entirely by myself for 5 years. You had no right to be here. You had no right to my things, my space, my privacy. Mom, please." Jason stood up from the stairs, his face pale. "Sit down, Jason." He sat. I turned to Melissa. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Did you honestly believe you could just walk in here and take over my life while I was gone?" Melissa's fake concern crumbled, replaced by defiance. "We were going to tell you eventually. My parents needed help, and you have all this space. It's not like you're using it. What kind of person has a 4-bedroom house and won't share with family?" "The kind of person who worked for 40 years to afford this house," I replied. "The kind of person who doesn't believe that being family gives you the right to steal." "We weren't stealing," Susan interjected, her voice shrill. "We were moving in. There's a difference." "Moving in requires an invitation," I said. "Breaking in does not." "We had a key," Greg added, as if that proved anything. "A key that was given to my son for emergencies, not for staging a home invasion." I looked at each of them in turn, letting them see that I was not afraid, not uncertain, not willing to be manipulated. "The property management company has already informed you that you need to leave. I'm here to make sure you understand that this is not negotiable." Amanda started crying harder. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I said, and I meant it. "You should have thought about that before you tried to take advantage of me." "You cold bitch," Melissa hissed, her mask finally dropping completely. "You have everything, and you won't share any of it. No wonder Jason never wants to visit. No wonder you're always alone." I smiled at her, the kind of smile that showed teeth. "I'd rather be alone than surrounded by thieves." "We're not thieves," Susan shouted. "We're family." "Family doesn't steal," I repeated. "Family doesn't conspire. Family doesn't wait for you to leave town so they can pick apart your life like vultures." I looked at Jason, who hadn't said a word since I told him to sit down. He was crying now, silent tears running down his face as he stared at the floor. "Jason," I said quietly. He looked up at me, his eyes red and devastated. "Why?" He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "Melissa said you had so much and we had so little. She said you wouldn't even notice if we moved her parents in, that you'd probably be happy to have the company. She said—" His voice broke. "She said you'd never know, and even if you found out, you'd forgive us because that's what mothers do." "And you believed her?" "I wanted to believe her," he whispered. "I wanted to believe there was an easy solution, that I could make everyone happy without anyone having to sacrifice anything. Life doesn't work that way, Jason. You know that." "I know." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." I wanted to comfort him. Every maternal instinct in me screamed to go to him, to hold him, to tell him it would be okay. But it wouldn't be okay. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. "Sorry isn't enough," I said instead. "Sorry is what you say when you accidentally break something. This was planned. This was deliberate. This was you choosing them over me, choosing the easy lie over the hard truth." "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that." I turned back to Melissa and her family. "You have until tomorrow morning to be out of my house. Everything you brought in, you take out. If anything of mine is missing, I will call the police and press charges. Do you understand? You can't do this, Melissa said, but her voice was hollow now, defeated. Jason, tell her she can't do this. Jason didn't say anything. Jason, Melissa grabbed his arm. You're really going to let her throw us out? You're going to let her treat my family like criminals? You are criminals, I said before Jason could respond. You attempted to establish residency in my home without my knowledge or consent. In some states, that's called squatting. In all states, it's called fraud. We didn't sign anything, Greg muttered. You didn't need to. The intent was clear. My attorney has already documented everything. The police have been notified. The only reason you're not in handcuffs right now is because I have a shred of mercy left for my son's sake. I looked at Jason again. Though I'm questioning that decision. Mom, please. Jason stood up again, taking a tentative step toward me. I know I messed up, I know I hurt you, but please don't do this. Melissa's parents really don't have anywhere else to go. Then Melissa and her parents should have thought of that before trying to con me. They weren't trying to con you. Jason, stop. My voice came out sharper than I intended, and he flinched. Stop making excuses for them. Stop defending the indefensible. They used you to get to me, and you let them because it was easier than standing up for what was right. I love her, he said desperately. I love Melissa. She's my wife. Love doesn't require you to lose yourself, I replied. Your father taught you that. I thought you understood. Something in Jason's expression crumbled then, some last defense finally giving way. He sank back down onto the stairs, his face in his hands again, and his shoulders shook with sobs. Melissa looked at him with something close to contempt. And in that moment, I saw exactly who she was. Not the sweet girl who'd charmed my son 6 years ago, not the devoted wife who'd stood beside him at our family dinners, but a woman who saw people as tools, as means to ends, as obstacles or opportunities and nothing in between. Fine, Melissa said coldly. We'll leave. But don't expect Jason to choose you over me. He's my husband. He goes where I go. He's an adult, I said. He goes where he chooses. Jason. Melissa's voice took on a commanding edge. Get your things. We're leaving now. Jason didn't move. Jason, Melissa repeated, louder this time. I'm not going to ask again. Maybe you should, I suggested quietly. Maybe instead of demanding, you should try asking. Maybe instead of manipulating, you should try respecting. Maybe then you'd understand why you're in this situation in the first place. Melissa's face flushed red. You don't know anything about our marriage. I know my son has lost weight in the past year. I know he stopped calling me except when you were listening. I know he used to laugh easily and now he barely smiles. So yes, Melissa, I think I know enough. You're poisoning him against me. I'm opening his eyes, I corrected. There's a difference. Susan stepped forward then, trying one last time. Helen, please be reasonable. We're family. We should be able to work this out. We're not family, I said flatly. You're my son's in-laws. There's a difference. That's cold. That's honest. Family supports each other. Family respects boundaries. Family doesn't lie and scheme and try to steal what isn't theirs. I gestured to the door. You have until 10 tomorrow morning. After that, I'm calling the police and reporting you for trespassing. Any possessions left behind will be donated or disposed of. Are we clear? For a moment I thought Susan might argue more, but Greg put a hand on her arm and shook his head. They'd lost, and they knew it. Amanda had already picked up her suitcases and was heading for the door, sniffling dramatically. Susan and Greg followed, their earlier swagger completely gone. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by their own greed. Melissa was the last to move. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw hatred there, pure and undiluted. This isn't over, she said quietly. Yes, I replied, it is. She turned to Jason one more time. Are you coming? Jason looked at her, then at me, then back at her. I could see the war playing out across his face, loyalty against reality, love against truth. I need some time, he said finally. I need to think. If you don't come now, don't bother coming at all. Melissa, I mean it, Jason. You choose her over me and we're done. The silence stretched out, painful and heavy. I wanted to tell Jason what to do, wanted to make the choice easier for him. But this was his decision. This was the moment he had to decide who he wanted to be. I'm sorry, Jason whispered. Melissa's expression went completely blank. Without another word, she picked up her purse and walked out the door, slamming it behind her hard enough to rattle the frame. And then it was just Jason and me, standing in my living room surrounded by evidence of betrayal and the wreckage of trust. You can stay here tonight, I said finally, but tomorrow you need to find somewhere else to go. Mom, no, Jason. You hurt me. You lied to me. You chose to believe I was the kind of person who would be happy being used and manipulated. You need to figure out who you are and what you really want, and you can't do that here. Where am I supposed to go? That's something you'll have to figure out. I picked up my purse and headed for the stairs. There are clean sheets in the linen closet. Lock the door when you're settled. Mom, wait, please. I stopped, turned back to look at him. My son. My baby, who'd grown into a man I barely recognized. I love you, Jason. I will always love you. But love isn't enough anymore. You broke something today, something that's going to take time to repair. Maybe it can be fixed eventually. Maybe it can't. But either way, it won't happen overnight. And it won't happen while you're still making excuses. I'm not. You are. You've been making excuses for months, probably years. Excuses for her, excuses for them, excuses for yourself. It stops now. I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and finally allowed myself to feel everything I'd been holding back. Anger, hurt, betrayal, grief for the relationship I'd thought I had with my son, and the reality of what it had become. But underneath all of that, there was something else. Relief. I'd protected my home. I'd protected myself. I'd set a boundary and held it, even when it hurt, even when every instinct screamed at me to give in for the sake of peace. Richard would have been proud. I was proud of myself. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Jason sitting at the kitchen table, his belongings packed in a single duffel bag. He looked like he hadn't slept. There's coffee, I said, gesturing to the pot I'd already made. Thanks. He poured himself a cup but didn't drink it, just held it between his hands like he needed the warmth. I called my friend Mark. He said I could stay with him for a while. That's good. Mom, He stopped, started again. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe you can't, I said honestly. Maybe some things stay broken. You said the door might be open eventually. I said maybe. If you show me that you've changed, that you understand what you did wrong and why it was wrong. If you show me that you can stand up for yourself and for what's right, even when it's hard. If you show me that you're willing to do the work. I will, he said earnestly. I promise I will. Promises are easy, Jason. Actions are hard. He nodded slowly, accepting that truth. Then he stood, picked up his bag, and walked to the front door. He paused there, looking back at me. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. That was never the question. After he left, I walked through my house, reclaiming every room, every space that had been violated. I opened windows to air out the lingering smell of strangers. I put my mother's vase back where it belonged. I threw out the food they'd left in my refrigerator and washed every dish they'd touched. It took most of the day, but by evening, my house felt like mine again. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Jason. He'd moved out of the apartment he shared with Melissa. They were separating, maybe divorcing. He wasn't sure yet. He'd started therapy. He wanted to know if we could have coffee sometime, just to talk. I told him I'd think about it. Another week after that, I got a voicemail from Melissa. It was rambling and angry, accusing me of ruining her marriage, of being controlling and manipulative, of turning Jason against her. She called me names I won't repeat. I deleted it without responding. 3 months later, Jason came by unannounced. I almost didn't let him in, but something in his face made me open the door. "I filed for divorce," he said. "It's final in 6 months." "I'm sorry you're going through that." "I'm not." He smiled, small and tentative, but real. "I mean, it hurts. But I'm not sorry. You were right, Mom, about everything. I lost myself trying to make her happy. And I lost you in the process. I don't want to be that person anymore." "Who do you want to be?" "Someone you'd be proud of. Someone Dad would have been proud of. Someone I can be proud of." I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Clarity in his eyes, strength in his posture, determination in his voice. "Would you like to come in?" I asked. His face lit up. "Really? Really? But we take this slow, Jason. We rebuild trust one conversation at a time. I can do that." He stepped inside and I closed the door behind us both. It would be months before things felt normal again. Maybe years before the hurt fully healed. But as we sat in my living room, drinking coffee and talking carefully about small things, I felt something shift. The trap I'd set hadn't just caught the thieves. It had shown my son the truth about himself and given him the chance to become someone better. Sometimes the hardest kind of love is the kind that says no. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the consequence of their own choices. And sometimes, just sometimes, people surprise you by choosing to grow. My house was mine again. My life was mine again. And if Jason was willing to do the work, maybe our relationship could be ours again too, but only time would tell.